Rex Heuermann's house, they had another visit from the feds after last year's raid, which is coming up pretty close to a 1 year anniversary now. This time, Asa was not there. They went in, they went to the basement. They seemed to know exactly what they were going for in the hoarder house this round, and they left with we don't really know what. Remember, last time they found child pornography, 100 some guns, several unlicensed, unregistered weapons and a creepy doll. I remember them carrying out that almost looked like Annabelle and started to make me wonder, like, is he doing spells in the basement? Joining me to discuss, Shavaun Scott, psychotherapist and author. What do you make of this round two back to the Heuermann house?
Well, clearly they had a reason, and we would love to know all that information. It really struck me. There's something about a basement and a serial killer that really brings up our worst nightmares. We know that serial killers, these particularly these sexual domination serial killers, they often have rituals designed to have control and power over the victim and often involves sadistic elements. So it just, again, made my skin crawl. It's a very creepy thing to think about a woman in a basement if he ever did have any victims down there.
We haven't heard anything about trophies with him yet. And that's not to say that he doesn't have any. It's just, I think that sort of information is still a bit under wraps. Do you think this is relating to something like that, where maybe they found something because they're going through his digital information? They have been for
Yeah.
quite some time. Obviously, there's been other leads and other possible murders as well. Do you think that that may be what they're looking for, that they may have missed? I mean, it's difficult to look through a house that is upkept, more or less a hoarder house where you don't
Yeah.
really even know where anything could possibly be. I'm wondering if there's some of that stuff down there that they found some leads as to what they may be finding. Just speculating.
Yeah, certainly could be things that perhaps they saw initially that they couldn't attach any significance to it. And now, if they have a lot more information, they can go back and be more focused and targeted. That would make sense.
Why is it that serial killers like to keep something? What is, I mean, and how common is it with a personality type list? Is it like all the time? Is it like 99%, or is it less than we think about when someone
I
does
think
that?
it's frequent. I don't know that we have data on exactly how many do because I think sometimes there are trophies that are never found.
Hmm.
They're disposed of at some point. But the serial killer is very driven by sexual compulsions, this kind of serial killer. And so a lot of their sexual pleasure, it doesn't just happen during the attack, but it's the pre-attack and the post-attack activity that they engage in. And so they use those kind of reminders of the event, or they'll often film themselves, and it's sort of like the pleasure goes on. And some of them engage in ridiculous amounts of time in fantasy and the reliving, and they use those trophies in that way.
I mean, is that kind of like, I mean, Dennis Rader is a great example, I think, of that, where he would literally like get dressed up in other, like, his victims' clothes and stuff sometimes, and
Yes, yes.
put himself in trees and weird things like that. I have no idea what Rex Heuermann was doing. Are these? I mean, just trying to. I mean, obviously trying to wrap your mind around a serial killer is not an easy thing to do. Are these people with their drive, their sexual connection to the killing and these horrible, horrible things? Are they not able to get pleasure in any sort of other normal way? Is this like the only way that they can get there, and that's what's driving it? Because just looking at normal stuff is just doesn't get get them there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They have really severe paraphilias, and they often have more than one. And paraphilia is defined as an abnormal type of sexual behavior, sexual
Hmm.
expression. They're not all harmful. You
Yeah,
look at people with a primary foot fetish as okay, that's a paraphilia. It's something that most of us do not share.
yeah.
But when it involves this control, power, domination, and sadism, that's when it's dangerous. And people like that are typically not real turned on by average, typical sexual behavior. Maybe they can perform, maybe they can function, but it's not what drives them. It's not this obsessive, addictive kind of force that they feel.
Is that always a result of abuse or something, or is that sometimes
Yeah.
just how some people come out wired?
Yeah, we used to think that it was always a result of abuse. And of course, I think it's about a third of them do have an abuse history, significant abuse history. I think everybody's got some kind of abuse history. But there are many cases where you have a serial killer who does not have a significant abuse history, and we don't have it figured out really well. Are some of them bullied? Yeah, some of them sometimes, but most of us were bullied at some point
Hmm.
during childhood. So I think as we're looking more and more at the brain, there are certainly some brain differences in people like this. And again, we're just at the cusp of being able to really understand the differences in brains, why some people seem to be wired this way. Was there abuse in childhood? Sometimes those can be looked at as a contributing factor, but it's certainly not one thing that causes it. And so the more you have a person with a lot of trauma, you have bullying, you have this, let's say, miswiring in the brain, and then maybe you have exposure to violent sexual materials, pornography, when they're really young, because a lot of this fantasy stuff that they get into starts when they're 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And so you have violence paired with arousal, and that starts at a young age. Throw in a little OCD, so you've got this tendency to ruminate and go over and over and over things in their mind. I mean, it's kind of, fortunately, they're rare, right?
Yeah,
So you don't see this combination come together in people often. If it was common, of course, we'd see more of them,
sure.
but it's this unique, I think, combination of the way they're wired, their upbringing, their environment, things that happen to them, and you end up with someone like this.
Does it have anything to do? Is there any research on this to look at, like, is this ever like a generational trauma type thing where, because some of these people just, seems like an instinct in them to do some of these things
Yeah.
where it's like this is just how it
Yeah.
works in their brains. I mean, could that have been like a generational type trauma, or an instinct that's in them that has never been kind of, wired out through evolution, where, caveman thinking, or not even caveman, but just, a couple hundred years ago thinking like survival, maybe their line, their lineage, we're killing people left and right from wherever they may have been in this world, and that has just kind of continued as this weird thing that continues in a line as we continue to evolve our brains.
Yeah, I think there's certainly questions about that. There are serial killers who had parents who were violent criminals, and
Hmm.
then there were some that had very normal, average parents, you know. So, what extent for any of us are there genetic factors and then the environmental factors? They go together, but it's certainly possible that there are brain differences that have a hereditary basis
Yeah.
that, you know, you could see, you know, down the lineage, that there were people in the history
Hmm.
of the violent person who were also violent. That's possible.
Very interesting. Well, we'll see where this one leads as
Mhm.
they start to sift through whatever was found in the dungeon of Rex Heuermann.
Exactly.
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.